to feel better about, my physical strength. It just never happened. And I realized I'm over 30. It's not going to happen by coincidence now.
Now you need to work after 30. Now we need to work.
You have to work for it.
I turned 50, motherfucker. I need to work for it.
And you realize you can't run anymore. Like running is tricky. Like going a distance is very tiring. I also, like by a coincidence, it's not a coincidence really, but I ended up getting an Apple Watch. I had always wanted an Apple Watch because they have this nice feature with like notifications and stuff.
I'm a Garmin guy.
And this was like the metric that I needed to optimize. Right?
The computer nerd.
And I started seeing that, I am improving a little bit. Let me now actually do a serious attempt at getting into shape. When you do this, you start reading up on how you can do this. And it turns out the biggest problem usually is on the input side. And I always thought I was fine on the input side. I thought I ate healthily. So I ended up getting a calorie tracking app. Swedish one, I think, Lifesum.
Really? Which one?
Lifesum.
Lifesum.
The one where Jesper worked before.
Yeah, Jesper was there, right? Are you using that one? Yeah. So we're promoting a Swedish startup again.
Yeah. Though, if they're listening, please call me. I have a lot of problems with your app, and I'm not getting the support I need. So I started doing that, and I realized I am way off in my estimate of what I'm eating. So obviously, I had to fix that as well.
So not training specifically, but eating as well, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you have to do all at once.
And this is a core topic. Is it 50-50 input training, or you think it's 28-60? What is your calculation in your head? How much effort you need to think about input?
So the interesting thing is fitness is multiple things. Right? One of them is the buildup of fat and weight.
Yeah.
That is 100% what you eat. Oof. The other part is what proportion of your body is muscle versus fat. And it turns out like you can get down to a good weight completely independent of training fairly easily. But what happens is you lose a lot of muscle. And it's not healthy to be low on muscle. So what you have to do is while you lose weight, you have to do strength exercises to encourage your body not to lose so much muscle.
So I'm learning something here. So we are talking about, this is not a sequence where you first eat right, and then it's like concurrent things you actually need to balance eating right, but at some point in the middle of this, you actually concurrently need to build muscle in order not to lose muscle or something.
Yeah, I mean, the goal at that point, this was me starting to work out, so I ended up gaining muscle. But the goal really, you shouldn't see this as, look, this is a way for me to build muscle. You are doing physical exercise to make sure you don't lose your current level of muscle. The goal is to lose fat.
You do gain appetite, though, from training, so potentially you eat more from training.
So you have an app to make sure that you don't.
Good point.
It is not super easy, but the biggest thought that I've had on this topic is, wow, imagine if I had just decided to do this like 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, because it is very controllable.
So you had this date 1.5 years ago approximately, and what did you start to do then?
I did everything at once.
Eating better.
The diet and the training?
The diet, the training, and the more you get into this, the more results you're seeing, the more your watch is telling you, oh, your VO2 max just went up. The more exciting it gets. So you start, I just wanted to see, hey, can I run now? I ended up getting to like 2 kilometers as my like warm-up exercise for the gym, of sprinting like full out 2 kilometers.
Really?
So my heart rate is around like 175, 176 something. And then I started thinking, could I maybe run a bit further? So I just went out and I ran 5K. It's like, well, turns out I can do that. Can I run farther? And you sort of build like that.
And what is your training regime right now? So where are we
Well,
at?
currently, I have a little bit of a problem working out.
Yeah.
Because of my injury.
Yeah, this is right. Yeah. But skip the injuries. Go to the week before the injury.
The week before the injury. So I tried doing gym 5 times a week, running to work 3 times a week. It's a 4K run. And that turned out to be a bit too much. So I scaled it down to, the week I got injured, the idea was just once a week run to work, 5 days a week gym, and rest.
But Agrin, when we worked together many years ago, I remember you actually loved to eat as well. And you, right? And you love a good steak or something, right?
I do.
So how did you change your diet potentially?
I had a hack for that, which I can't recommend for everyone. But beyond the app, I ended up subscribing to a service that just sends me my food. And I
take that thing out of the equation.
Exactly.
Eat what you get.
Don't think about it. The meals are small. They're very easy to control, and just completely. I've gone back to actually eating things that I enjoy now, but I completely stopped eating any form of, candy, sugary substance, fatty substance. We stopped using olive oil, even though olive oil is supposed to be good for you, right? But a tablespoon of olive oil is 130 calories.
So when you're chasing down to single calories, then everything goes.
Yeah.
But I need to ask you then, can we elaborate a little bit on the mental journey here? Because I've been thinking about this for a long time. I just turned 50 this year. So if you had I should have started this when I was 25. Fuck you, man. I should have started this when I was 30. I was really fit and healthy up to 25, and then it's been deteriorating. And right now, I'm the balancing topic, right? Driving my own company since 2019. I mentally and intellectually, I want to do it, but I deprioritize it. So what was your mental state, or how did you think about this to get it up on the agenda and in your prioritization? How did that work for you?
So I think a bit earlier you guys spoke about having fears of things. I had... part of me getting fit and wanting to be fit is I really don't want to die. It is sort of the unavoidable consequence of being unhealthy that you will lose a few years of your life. And the older I got, the more I realized, already lost some.
That's a good way.
That and just forcing yourself to do it.
But still, you want to live well, right? You wouldn't like to do like David Goggins. Do you know David Goggins?
I don't.
Okay, ignore it. But anyway, some people just live to the extreme to be as healthy and work out in extreme different ways. And still, you want to have a good life as well, right?
Yeah. So there's the topic of balance, right?
Yes.
Exactly.
Let's go there.
And balance is something when I was younger, I didn't appreciate well enough.
Go hard.
Go hard, just do it, force yourself through it. And I think everyone's different with what you end up doing. But if I look at what has changed now, like how do I have time to still really push for work? And also work out, be with my family and everything in between, is when you have this thing that you have to do. You have to go exercise. It's unavoidable. You have to. And you have to go to work. There's no way around it. Everything else that doesn't matter has to give.
Yeah. TV.
But you can't live for tomorrow all the time. Sometimes you have to live for today as well, right?
Right. That's true.
So, if you just live for tomorrow and can't really enjoy a good steak or having a good time, then you could potentially end up regretting that as well, wouldn't you?
That's true.
Do you have a way to balance today in some way, or do you actually, enjoy it, Like well, Steven Seagal basically had not Steven Seagal.
Steven
it was,
Seagal, the greatest quote machine on earth.
No, but the Rambo guy, he basically said, I have a
Stallone,
yeah. He had a diet of basically saying, I'm very strict during the work days, but on the weekends I'd eat pizza, I'd drink beer, I'd enjoy myself. Would that be something that would work for you think? Or?
Not for me personally. I'm sure it works for a lot of people who work out much more than I do. But for me, I think my way of balancing sort of the enjoyment with non-enjoyment is doing it in moderation. So this is like the balance thing again. So previously, I might have said, well, heck yeah, let's eat the 600-gram steak. Now I'm going to be thinking about the consequences of eating that steak. And I'm going to buy a super nice, maybe 200-gram steak, or maybe even smaller, like a really small, very nice
Now
piece.
you go to the super luxury Kobe steak and you enjoy every gram of it, but only 200 grams. Or 100.
Henrik, how do you balance your life in training and mental training?
I don't. The simple answer. The simple answer is I'm 50 and I'm with the push hard mentality. I intellectually balance my life, but then to take something intellectually to execution and behavior, I'm fucking it up big time. So a couple of examples. I mean, like on the one hand side, the simple topic of switching off work and being in the moment with your wife and your kids, fucking that up all the time. And I don't want to do it, but my brain is sort of, you're not here, Henrik. Okay, so this is number one, I would say. And then in the same vein, I would argue that, I'm gonna trade 3 times per week now, and every, it's 10 o'clock. So I'm getting so in the zone, and my head is so obsessing around my work or what I enjoy, and I enjoy the work. That's what I mean. So I have a hard time compartmentalizing, and I think it has something. There's another concept in all this that I think is very important to talk about, and that is discipline. So it's one thing to have balance, but in order to have balance, you need to have discipline in execution, and I'm lacking some of that discipline. That's my. What about you, man?
Yeah, speaking about discipline, I think I heard Mike Tyson say something about what the definition of discipline is, and he said basically discipline means doing something you hate like you love it.
I love it.
I think it's a good definition, right?
Definition.
I love this kind of short definition.
Eat the frog. Eat the frog. Yeah. You remember the book?
Yeah.
But maybe that's enough on balancing and hit. But damn it, inspirational stuff. Yeah.
Cool. Well, with that, I'm very glad that you were able to come here on very short notice. And a dear old friend of mine, Agrin Hilmkil. Sorry, I forgot your last name.
Do it yourself,
right?
Hilmkil.
Hilmkil.
Is that the way? Sorry for that. I never said your last name. I just realized that. I think we always just call you Agrin.
Agrin. He's Agrin. Come on.
Anyway, we worked together while at Peltarion, and you are an awesome expert in AI and math and so many more things, and I learned a lot from you, so I really appreciate you, both from your expertise, but also from your personality. I think you're an awesome person. But you've been working now at some other places, including Microsoft Research, but right now you're at a company, what was the name? Latent Labs, right?
That's right.
Right. So something about, you couldn't go into details, but something about making biology programmable, right? Was that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, cool. I know you can't speak too much about it, but I'm looking forward to hear more shortly about, what you're really doing there. And I'm sure it's some kind of AI related thing that sounds really amazing. But perhaps you could mention just shortly, what did you do at Microsoft Research?
So Microsoft Research was interesting. I was in a research team for a lot of the time. Initially, we looked at causal machine learning, various kinds. So we were looking at causal inference, causal discovery.
Perhaps you just should briefly describe what it means with causal inference.
Right. So the common way that people keep talking about it is, machine learning learns correlations, right? Yes. Say yes.
Yes.
Perfect.
That was causal, by the way.
It was. Correlations are interesting, good, but sometimes you need to be, when you want to modify the state of a system, you want to make sure that you find the causal connection so that you can exert control over the system. Because if you do not, you might be changing just an indication of success without achieving it.
Yeah. What's the classical example of the correlation versus causation? I mean, something about, it's raining. No.
Ice cream.
Temperature and elements. Temperature outside versus heat or temperature.
Yeah.
If you look at a sort of temperature outside versus temperature by the elements, what you see is when you, or is it inside? I also always forget.
I mean, so many examples. Yeah, I mean,
so many examples.
I mean, you have this being sunny and the sales of ice creams or something, and you say, okay, well, it's sunny outside. Then you could assume that a causal relation that would be that ice cream sales increase, which is logical. But if you do the opposite, saying, oh, the ice cream sales is going up, then it must mean the sun is coming soon. That would be idiotic, right? So the correlation would be bidirectional, but the causal relationship would be unidirectional.
Right. So you can look at the number of ice cream sales and probably infer the temperature.
Yeah.
Right. But if you want to change the temperature, that is not the way to do it.
Yeah.
Sell more ice cream, maybe we get better weather.
Yeah. I mean, cool. And it's much harder, of course, to do machine learning in causal inference than traditional machine learning, of course, right? So
there are it is very challenging, and there are a lot of sort of assumptions you have to do and so on. But it turns out that deep learning can be very useful for this. So the initial thing my team looked at was, in general, can we apply can we solve traditional causal ML tasks with deep learning?
And what was the years when you were working at Microsoft Research?
So that was 2022 until 24. 2 years.
And of course it's a pointed question, because I was fishing for if it was before OpenAI collaboration or during, and obviously it's during.
Yep.
And we don't need to talk more about that, but I'm sure there are many interesting things and connections there happening.
Yeah, there's the interesting phenomena of knowing that there are people in the company you work for that can't really speak about what they do, and you will just never know.
Yeah. And was this in London? You moved to London. Did it coincide with your joining Microsoft Research, or?
It did, yeah. So I was very, very grateful about them being able to accommodate me and my wife in such a way. So she was wrapping up her PhD, and therefore allowed me to stay in Sweden for 1 year. And then we both moved over to Cambridge initially, and then London. So
the research, where's your office? Is that Cambridge, or is it in London, or both?
It is in Cambridge.
It is in Cambridge, right?
There are offices in London as well. I think mostly like sales, and then there's Microsoft AI, who's a bit more secretive, and I don't know a whole lot about where they are right now.
And Microsoft is such a huge company. So if you look at the organizational unit or the business unit or whatever you want to call it of Microsoft Research,
right,
how would you frame what that does or what that was all about?
So a lot of different things. Exactly. But really what they're trying to do is they're trying to push innovations in areas that matter to them as a company. AI, of course, is a very big priority right now, but there's also a lot of good work going on in infrastructure, like actual physical infrastructure. So things like optical devices for the cloud, for faster communication, for storage, for compute, and so on. So,
and my real question is a little bit to probe if it was applied research that eventually ends up in new technology for Microsoft, or if you also were doing applied research for others than Microsoft.
It wasn't for others.
No, it is it's an internal unit.
It is internal, and some of the work happening there is very fundamental. Some of the work is very applied. You are probably very familiar with the ResNet. So that is Microsoft Research. Right. So that is one example of them doing something very fundamental that then ended up being a thing in all applications AI.
Yeah. Super cool stuff. And why Cambridge? Why did it start in Do you know the origin story?
Oh, it's probably connected to the university.
Yeah, somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
Cool stuff. But we actually here today, partly because we did it very ad hoc and in the last minute kind of thing, but we're simply here to do a proper after work, I think.
Yeah.
Proper after work doing what we love, which is speaking about AI. And in this case, a major focus on news.
Yeah.
So I have a list of like news stories that we could just go through a bit and just have a proper after work and discuss what we think about it.
Oh, I look forward to that, Anders.
Yeah. And perhaps we could start. One big thing was, of course, the Google I/O, the annual kind of developer conference that Google has every year. And they released a number of things, a large number of AI-related announcements, of course. I mean, it sounds more like an AI conference than a developer conference, but still, it's super cool what they actually have released. For one, of course, they are transitioning the normal Google search into more of an AI search, as they have for some time. They had the kind of AI overview before coming up in Google search, but now they have a new AI mode. Think like perplexity, if you think about that, or even OpenAI have their own like web search now, which is LLM powered, and now they're doing something similar here as well. So, I mean, I think it's interesting to think about, what that really means. And of course, they have to take this path, right? Everyone else is doing it. Google search is the biggest moneymaker they have, and they have to make it more AI mode related. But on this, and I thought about this. I mean, some initial thoughts for me is, so many people are angry about this because it means that you don't have to leave Google to figure out and get the information you need. With traditional Google search, you just got the links and a small snippet, and then you had to click the link and actually go to the publisher to get the information you wanted. And now, not so much. Do you have any thoughts about
That's
this?
already gone, though, right?
I think so too. By
what? Because of other providers, or
yes.
What do you mean?
Who's been using Perplexity or equivalent for a while? You're using Perplexity?
I'm honestly not.
Which one?
So I was the time I wanted to use Perplexity, I wasn't allowed to use it.
Yeah. But did you use something equivalent then, maybe?
Perhaps.
Yeah.
But one thing that stands out to me with these things is just looking at people who are less tech savvy. So my mom, for example, every now and then she's very excited and she tells me about, you know what, Agrin, I used ChatGPT for this. So we're going to, many in our family are going to a wedding in August, and she wanted to reply to one of my cousins in English. She's not very confident writing in English, so she just asked ChatGPT to write up an email for her. She asked it in Swedish, it produced the English letter, and things like that are amazing. She also uses this for like searching the web, learning things, and
I mean, you're starting to use the chatbots more than a traditional search, right? I'm certainly doing that more and more. I think even a majority of, when I previously just searched for things, I nowadays mainly GPT for things, if we call it that, right? Do you do the same, or?
Yeah, definitely. I'm a big fan of Claude, so I'm completely locked in with Claude.
That's your search engine.
That's my search engine. I mean, I work with code. I work with ML for both of these things. Claude is amazing, and that is a great way of getting through like the first thing, the sort of the findability problem of knowledge.
And I noticed.
We'll speak more about Claude and the Opus and Sonnet 4 shortly.
Yeah. But
later,
you used to sort of to latch on to a question: is this a problem? Do they have to do it? I'm trying to observe my own way of using these different tools now. And for me, it becomes, I can almost categorize, if I'm searching for a problem or a topic, want to know more about something, my first choice is Perplexity, and I type in or I even speak to it and ask it the fundamental question in plain English. Yeah. What was the origin of this, or so when I'm doing research type topics like this, then sometimes I need to find the closest guitar stores, then I typically still just type it in. I mean, like then I really depend on Google, or I simply type it in my browser, and I simply rely on the fundamental advertising and search, and you get those links up. So for product shopping, I haven't changed so much, but for everything else, I changed.
I think that's an interesting area for AI to get into.
Yeah,
so I'm
for
just
sure.
waiting for people to release MCPs for. They haven't they?
Well, OpenAI
I
have
think
a
I saw
product
something about
release, yes. So shopping
Maybe
release.
that's the one.
Shopping
Yeah.
MCP, right?
But just thinking, you know, it's good for you. I think we all can agree. For us as users of these kind of services, it's a good thing. But for the publishers, may not be, right? I mean,
It's an unresolved question, right?
It is.
It is.
How are we going to encourage interesting articles to be written by humans if we can't monetize that?
We need to have a business model for the producers in some sense. I mean, and this is really what everyone is protesting and being really angry with. Right.
And goes back to the research of the podcast we had on IP rights and intellectual property, that if we don't solve that in a similar way like Spotify solved it or whatever, you know, what's the motivation to write great stuff? You know, that is unresolved.
I mean, if we take the comparison to Spotify, I think it's interesting. You know, they certainly focused on the user, the consumer of music to start with. But then they moved to the producer of music. And, you know, from 2015, 16-ish forward, they had a big bet on just being the best service that could be for producer music. I think, you know, if Google did the same, it could actually be a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
They
So
haven't really
is
done
that a
it.
prediction that you need to solve the producer side and the consumer side? I think it's that simple.
Yeah.
What do you think?
So what is interesting to me is thinking about my experience with Spotify recently, which I think ties exactly into this, and you know, music becoming so easy to make and produce, and also some of these companies getting what, at least from the outside, looks like optimizing suggestions based on which content is cheaper for them to force you through.
Interesting.
I've noticed with Spotify that the music that I got, because I became completely dependent on Discover Weekly, the music that I got really took a downturn in terms of quality, and I stopped enjoying it.
Oh, really?
To the point where it's like it ended up becoming completely useless to me, because I'm getting all of this like random cover crap, presumably generated with some, you know, easy to use tool, some simple like cover by maybe an artist that just does covers. I'm just thinking with AI, it's gonna get even worse, that type of behavior. So I ended up, I had been using Spotify since they were in like beta mode or something like that. Always used Spotify, completely dependent on it. Last year I stopped.
But are you inferring that they basically started to produce music that was less costly, or you know, where they could make more money, or you know, so they started to recommend stuff in your Discovery Weekly that was produced in a way that sort of is more cost effective to them.
So there are a lot of discussions online about whether this is happening or not.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, but
I know of services that do this, but I did notice like a steep decline.
You notice a clear decline in your own opinion, in your perception, in terms of what it could produce.
And I don't have any insights, but given how it worked when I was there, it wouldn't actually matter for Spotify to do that. So they still paid out 70% basically all the time, independent of who it was. So, but it could have changed in recent years, who knows? But my guess is not. It's probably due to other reasons, but who knows?
It might just be that it's so difficult to find and recommend music when what you're dealing with is some type of similarity based on what you previously listened to, and you end up with this like weird trajectory through space that over time just deteriorates. So maybe a successful strategy for me would be to open a new account with Spotify.
Could be.
And it's also like the whole recommendation space is changing vastly when there's a magnitude more to choose from, and 50% of that magnitude is crap, or you know, AI produced. So the whole space is ultimately evolving.
Maybe, but you know, that's what collaborative filtering and the recommender system that they are experts with are supposed to fix for you. But still, who knows? Anyway,
but it's the
AI mode. That's one
the
big news from Google I/O, right?
Yeah.
And
Let's go.
we have a long list here, so I'm trying
let's go
to
faster.
manage
I
time
think we need
here
to
a
go
bit.
faster on each. We go into
Okay,
deep.
so another, they have the image generator, text-to-image generator called Imagine, similar to DALL-E in OpenAI, and they released a new version, now Imagine 4. I'm not sure if you used it or tried it. I tried it, but I'm not super impressed. But what I saw with Imagine 4 was actually rather impressive, I would say. Have you tried or seen it? Or?
I haven't tried the latest one.
I still don't think it's proper mode to the stuff when I try to get stuff done, and I'm now referring more to ChatGPT where I've done more work.
Yeah.
I think there's a challenge with the multimodal that it's supposed to understand what I'm doing, but it clearly opens up a new. So my system prompts go somewhere else. I think it's still not there.
No, and I actually like OpenAI's approach to this. The problem with image generation, as I see it, is that the prompting strategies you have to make for image generation is very different from text generation, I would argue. And OpenAI, they have the nice trick of actually using the text generator to generate an image prompt for you. So you can simply talk to it as you do for text generation, and it will generate the prompt for the image generation indirectly, and then you get a really good image. That's not what I believe Imagine is doing. But I think perhaps more interesting one is they released they updated the video generator as well, Vui 3. And the cool thing with this is actually finally they are not just generating the video, the images, but also the audio in sync with the video.
Wow. That's
so
cool.
I mean, they can literally I can take a picture of Agrin. I can say generate a video where Agrin says "I love Anders," and it will say that with lips synced and everything.
Unless it complains, saying this isn't appropriate.
Could be some kind of.
But this is a big step forward when it
audio has been so lagging behind, I think, for a long time.
Yeah. Audio is a very exciting space as well.
And you have some experience with audio as well.
I have worked fairly extensively with it. So audio is interesting, I think, because even though you can convey emotion through text, I think you get an order of magnitude more with audio.
Yeah.
So imagine a conversation when you hear somebody's emphasis and pronunciation. Yeah. You get so much more out of it, at least as a human. And I think if we're talking about building agents that are going to, understand humans and be able to effectively communicate with us, surely they have to be very tightly integrated with speech.
Yeah. But still, it's getting closer to. I mean, if you take all the fears that Hollywood has about generating movies on demand, and now you can more or less with a single prompt get at least like a couple of seconds of video that is more or less professionally looking. I mean, it really looks good.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of providers have the same, right? Like this isn't just Google. The technology is there now.
Yeah. But if you think about it, I think the first critical threshold when this is going to be really useful, I can just look at this as my own, as a founder for a company. When I can get to something really good that has 15 to 30 seconds, then I can do my marketing, advertising, video, micro stuff for social media. I mean, it doesn't need to be more, but when you get that to a really high professional level, then I think it's going to be very, very useful for small, medium business compared to what it really means to do a full-on production.
Right. There's a company in London called Synthesia. This is basically what they do, I believe, or they do various types of content. I think for a lot of use cases, it is basically there.
I think the way I see this now, for the digital agency, they can produce a video production in 30 seconds at very small cost.
Right.
And what I'm talking about, but there's some tricks and tweaks that need to be done, right? But to take that to me as a business owner, prompting what they are doing, that's what I'm talking about. But I agree with you. For really low cost, someone who knows what they're doing can stitch a couple of things together. But I think it's the next, I'm talking about when I can do it with simply prompting.
I'm pretty sure you can do it already.
Okay, maybe I'm... Yeah.
You should try out the tool if you have a good application for it.
So Synthesia.
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 But another I think London-based company is 11 Labs as well.
Yeah, 11
right?
Labs.
They are amazing, right?
Yeah.
And
They are
especially-
super good. Not in
killing.
Swedish, if you've listened to Swedish.
I've tried it in Swedish.
But I have an interesting relationship with 11 Labs. Not an actual relationship, as in they know who I am, but so I was at Storytel building.
Swedish startup for audiobooks, right?
I think it's not a startup anymore. to be
No.
honest.
Storytel is, is this the biggest one or second biggest one right now in the market in Sweden?
I'm sure it's the biggest one, unless they've took a huge downturn.
No, there are two brands. Which one is the other brand? Storytel is the biggest.
Doesn't matter. It's a big one. Okay.
So this is audiobooks, massive collection.
Massive collection. They own it, and so on. So while I was there, I was building technology for audiobook creation.
Is this before or after Peltarion?
After.
This is after, right?
This is
So it's
after.
Peltarion, then Storytel, Microsoft Research.
Right.
That's it.
Right. And I'm not going to go through everything that happened. But I think a year ago, I saw them actually releasing a collaboration with 11 Labs.
Oh, really?
And I think they started having audiobooks made by 11 Labs.
Yeah, so you have as well this Blinkist, the app that was like coming in 2015, etc., which summarized books to 15 minutes.
Right.
We actually had this as a news here. So they completely, not completely, but they many of the curation of the books right now is done with 11 Labs, and it's shortening up the time to production in a very, very big
And
ratio,
that's
so.
super cool.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think it's a completely different level if an audio company is comfortable with the content, where it's like, imagine a piece of content that you're not going to listen to 10, 15 minutes of content. If it's 10, 15 minutes, you might be okay with like limited dynamic range in terms of emotion. If it's 10 hours,
Yeah, it needs to be good. It needs to
Yes,
be good.
yes, but so for Blinkist, I think this really, really makes sense because it's maximum 12 to 15 minutes summary of a book.
Yeah.
I agree with you. 1 hour. But I have listened to some of this, and they're quite good.
they are, right?
They are quite good.
I think the English voices are amazing.
Yes.
I mean, some of them are, I would be happy listening to them for
Yes,
in hours.
yes. So I was working with Suno now before Data Innovation Summit because I got tired for all of these YouTube video restrictions for music. So I created like 2 albums and posted them on Spotify and stuff. It doesn't matter. So we used them during the conference. It was great. And the beautiful thing that I basically took the entire content that we had on Data Innovation Summit, summarized that in the major topics that we wanted to discuss, and made songs about that.
That's very cool.
Yeah, and it's on YouTube. It's really good.
And
It doesn't matter. Coming back, the sound and the expression and the cadence of the English songs. There is no way you will see that this is actually.
But this is fun. Why don't you show it to us? Because actually, there is a couple of songs on YouTube now that you produced. I mean, like you love music.
Yeah, they're probably on YouTube as well, but I think it's on
Spotify. It's on
mostly.
Spotify.
So Suno, for people that don't know, and UDO, these are the kind of music producing services where you simply prompt to create a full song with the instruments, the melody, and the lyrics, and the voice as well.
But I need to challenge you here. It's not only Sumo. I know you've been going down
UDO
the.
as well.
No, I did do.
You've gone down the EDM route.
Yeah.
You have I see what you have in the back
So
room.
I went through all of them, 11 labs. I tried actually to put my text into their voices and etc. But I think that right now,
Sumo.
Suno is killing.
So do you, like you composed the song and all that, but we're talking now about the voice of the actual. I mean, like
Yeah, I will come. I'm just.
because I found the link and I listened to it. It's a cool song.
It's a cool album actually.
It's an album.
It doesn't matter. Continue.
We would never get through all the news if we go this slow as we do. We get stuck at the first topic.
I just Googled on this. They have 100 news from Google I/O. Are we going to go through all of them?
No.
100.
I am not. Okay, but let's. I think potentially let's take at least one or two more. I think the web use, the Project Mariner, is basically, if you remember, OpenAI, they have the operator functionality where you can ask it to browse websites, take a number of action, and then do something you want.
And Anthropic has computer use.
Yes.
What do they call it? Anthropic.
Call it computer use.
I think it's computer use. Oh.
Yeah, but it's different. Yeah, I guess in their case, I'm not sure if Anthropic has developed it, but before it was basically a containerized thing you have to download yourself and control. But in Operator, it's basically their managed cloud service, more or less. So they run everything. You don't have to manage the containers.
And what is the Google way?
I think the latest news here with Mariner is similar to Operator. You basically run it in the cloud, and you ask to do things, and you can do things in parallel. And but it's not a computer use; it's a web use, basically. I think.
Web use that's also a distinction.
Or I think browse use is a proper term, right? So they can control a web browser, and they can take a number of actions, and in an agentic way, perform what you want it to do. Right? So I think we need to move faster here, but I think it's cool. I mean, it's a lot of copying, I think, from what all the other AI labs are doing. But I still would argue that Google actually has taken the lead. I'm not sure what you think here, but I think today they had at least overtaken OpenAI's lead significantly.
Okay, motivate.
As a consumer, I don't think I care at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure it matters a lot for the people working in each company, and surely it matters a lot for people building agentic software in general. When it comes to this quarter of AI, I am not very invested in terms of tagging along with evolution. I'm just super excited as a customer, and I'm seeing everything is going to get better. The services are getting so good. I have so many use cases where I can't wait for agents to solve these problems for me.
But the way I'm thinking about this, am I sticking to one universe? A little bit like, I have all my stuff in Google or all my stuff in Apple, so I can't wait until Google fixes this. Or will you shop around for different tools like best of breed? I'm going to use Perplexity for this. I'm going to use OpenAI or Claude for this. What is your take here? Because then the consumer cares, right?
I think at this point, we're like in the happy early days when people are happy integrating with everything.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's going to come a time like, how all the media companies in the beginning, they fixed TV subscriptions. Now we're back there again. And I'm sure we're going to see the same here.
I mean, it's the argument of app fatigue, right? That you're going to switch too much and it's just going to be, then you're going to have a super app that controls other apps.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, we can't pre-compute embeddings for your documents unless you subscribe to Google something AI plus.
We're going to get there.
But in some sense, the AI functionality of generative AI's core functionality is getting commoditized in some sense, at least, right? So I think all of them have similar kind of functionality, and you can stick with the favorite supplier you have, or I guess in some sense.
Right now, definitely. And Anders, you said copying OpenAI. I'm not sure that's fair. Like, this space is evolving so quickly, and I think we're seeing co-evolution. Who knows who started working on it first? Yeah. We just know who released it first.
True. Well said. And I think Google has historically been significantly in the lead, though. In the last 20 years, before 2020 at least, and Google was heavily in the lead, and they invested the most in AI. But then suddenly OpenAI came about, and they actually, through all the GPT work, took the lead. But now Google has taken it back in some sense, I would say.
But I have a spin on this, because we've been talking about this, and ranting around this a bit. And then sometimes it's almost like, actually, what we have experienced as consumers or as newsreaders, is that a reflection of who's really in the lead? Or is that a reflection who is kicking ass in marketing and go-to-market strategies, and all of a sudden navigating in order to get their story to blow up? And here I think there has been a couple of debacles where Google has not done a good launch job.
Yes.
And there's been some
Horrible joke,
awesome
actually.
tactical moves of OpenAI, where it's clear that they have waited to release something they've done, and its timing is so fantastic from them, and this is pure marketing, has nothing to do with who's in the lead or better, but I think is like OpenAI to some degree has outcompeted from a pure marketing
but
genius.
I think I
you
agree
see what I
with
mean?
you. I think Google have, although they have the core competence, the marketing and the way they strategically went to market, so to speak, has been horrible in recent years.
Not horrible, but OpenAI has been amazing.
Yeah, maybe.
And another thing, if you look at things like that, is I don't think OpenAI is making so many ads, are they? Maybe they started, but a year ago or so, I started seeing ads for Claude.
Oh, interesting.
So I think you're right. It is, when it comes to acquiring customers that aren't just developers, it is really getting down to the marketing game now.
But it's also a question of distribution. I mean, here Google and Microsoft have a clear advantage, right?
Yeah.
OpenAI does not, and nor does Anthropic. I saw some numbers saying that Gemini now has 400 plus million users of Gemini. I think OpenAI with their ChatGPT app has, 500-600 million or something. So they're still in the lead, but I think it's unfair to say that Gemini has 400 million users. It's simply that they integrated into Gmail, they integrated into Google Drive, and they have the distribution there. So they simply get the users for free, more or less, because it's put in front of all the users, so they just get them for free.
Yeah.
Whereas Claude and OpenAI has to fight for it a bit more.
But then you can talk about who's in the lead, right? And you at least need to break that down into 3 core components: technology-wise or research-wise, what they actually have under the hood or what they've done; marketing-wise, in terms of how they're winning the marketing space; and then you add distribution strategies or distribution possibilities. Where's the real moat, by the way, in one of those 3?
I think
all 3.
I think the moat is more compute limitations going forward. But
Do you think that's the real moat?
Do you think the mode is having access to compute?
Yeah, exactly.
To large amount of compute, yes.
Interesting. I think it is fairly possible nowadays to get access to very large amounts of
If you have
compute.
huge amount of money, yes. But who does?
Well, yeah. But we're talking about competition between companies who are able to raise fantastic amounts of money.
So if we look at the moat between those 3, what is it? Is it distribution? I think distribution is part of the moat here. Marketing also. I don't know.
I think it depends on if you simply want to come on top of the leaderboard for some kind of benchmark in more kind of a research sense, or actually you want to have a product distribution with number of active users, and it's a different thing.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
But it's different games, right?
Yes.
We're talking about providers of like the foundational layer in a way, right? There's also the application layer. I'm really curious. Do you guys think it is possible to build a moat there? I see people talking about how the value is in the application layer, but the other question I see asked is, well, is it possible to actually defend the value there? Or will people just switch over?
This is so interesting because I hear arguments of leave the LLM, the foundation layer is no money, is commoditized already. You need to go to the application layer. So I've seen quite well rhetorically good arguments that trying to understand where the moat is, and one saying there's nothing in the application layer, and one says it's all there, right? I'm very confused.
But it's similar. We have spoken about similar kind of topics in the past, and if we think like a couple of years in the future, I think we can see at least a couple of tiers. You call it that. One could be the frontier tier, where we probably will see like a handful of super huge frontier AI models that will be trillions of parameters in them. And they are really, really good, but extremely expensive to use. So you can't really build an application on them. And you don't use them to build applications. What you do is you basically distill information to provide your own, like more specialized model. And that's something that any company should do and can do. And then you can get down to at least a few billions, perhaps, parameters in it, and it still works really well. So then we'd have one tier of a few very selected, super huge mega models of trillions of parameters, but then thousands and tens of thousands, or if not millions, of more application tier models.
This is also our prediction in our Christmas special.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? So is it interesting to build a European super?
But do you agree with this idea first, Agrin?
I'm not sure on that. There's been fairly recently, there's been a lot of talk about hitting scaling limits, right? And the scaling limits simply being, well, are we actually going to see the same scaling law upheld as we make the models or the compute we spend on training even bigger, even more?
I have a topic about that, so let's get back to that because yeah.
Sure,
Okay.
but I mean, you are almost assuming that we're going to keep scaling.
Yes.
With this statement.
And certainly not in terms of perhaps number of parameters or amount of data, but in terms of intelligence and capabilities, yes. Significantly.
So my thing is, we might live in a universe where what happens next is we start scaling more on the inference side. Yes. And to me, this maps to what OpenAI is proposing with their PhD level compute. I don't think we're talking about fantastically larger models. I think we're talking about spending much more compute. And I'm not just talking about reasoning tokens. I'm talking about having these flows with multiple agents collaborate with each other. That ends up, one query ends up being 100.
But I think also it's yes and no, I would say, to that comment. So let's go a bit deeper into that. So one thing is, I think the current models are really good in knowledge management. If you remember the OpenAI kind of pyramid of 5 levels, the first one is basically conversational, then you have reasoning, then you have autonomous, and then innovation and organizational. I think today we have really good level 1, really good knowledge management. But if it comes to reasoning, they get even better, but it's still rather poor, certainly behind humans, and that will increase and change a lot. And then it's not perhaps the number of parameters that needs to change or the data. It's really the architecture or the algorithmic side that need to change, I would argue. So we will continue to see, and the same, of course, to agentic, autonomous, and innovation going forward. So I think we will still see a significant change in the more, let's call it algorithmic side, that will bring AI much more capabilities than it doesn't have today. So then it's not just an inference compute thing. It's really a change in the AI system as such, I would say.
There's a need for another style of architecture to sort out reasoning.
Yeah. Would you agree with this?
Team LeCun.
Team
yes.
Yeah, full on.
But I think already with the current O1s that we're seeing, they already transition from the standard transformer to something else.
Right.
So we already start seeing it, and even the diffusion models that we combine transformers with diffusion technology has moved away from the traditional transformers. We're already starting to see a lot of algorithmic change, so to speak.
I think I used to be Team LeCun in these things, but what I'm seeing is I'm constantly being blown away by what is happening and what is possible. So I'm starting to lean into maybe we can get a lot more out of our current technology. And I'm not saying just training them for longer, but
you would agree that the standard transformer from 2017 has significantly changed, right?
Of course,
yes.
Of course. Significantly, no, but has changed, and there's been a lot of optimizations along the way, and we've changed a lot of how we deal with them.
But all the reinforcement learning, fine-tuning that happens afterwards, it's not a standard transformer thing, right?
Well, the transformer remains. We're just talking training methodology.
But it's added a lot of components outside of it, right? So it's not the standard transformer training methodology that you use anymore.
So then we're getting into my argument, right? Which is we might be almost there. Maybe we need to add something on top.
Yes.
Rather than completely changing the...
I would never say completely change.
Right.
No, but if you go...
Because some people are arguing that, fundamentally transformers cannot...
But that's not what Jan LeCun says.
Almost.
So if you think that's what Jan LeCun says, then I would disagree.
But let's pick it apart, because he says... Well, I'm not expert enough to explain it, but he says the fundamental understanding of the technology we're using today will not take us all the way. So he says this is fine, but we need something else.
Right.
You mean Jan LeCun, or?
Yeah.
But he has a big argument. Now we go into rabbit hole here. But
it's fun.
Since we have
I would love to hear it, Anders.
Okay, so let's go there a bit then. What he disagrees with a lot is, of course, the autoregressive nature of LLMs. Meaning just predict the next token and in token space. So what he's speaking about in the JEPA architecture is that you don't go to token space, that you actually do the reasoning and prediction and multi-step inference in the latent space. So that's in his case the energy space that he's thinking about. So both the output and the input is then first having an encoder into their energy space, and in that space you do the prediction steps. So in short, I mean, it's basically latent space reasoning, which I've been speaking about, I think, a number of times here. And we're still not seeing it really, because it's still mainly reasoning in token space, which is, to my view, idiotic. Sorry to say it. But I mean, if we call it like this, if you take the normal decoder, which a GPT model is, it doesn't really have a formal encoder. But in practice, a decoder, which the GPT has, the first layer is an encoder. And then you have some reasoning happening in the middle layers and through the tokens in the context window that you have. And the last couple of layers is basically an encoder back to token space. So every time you have to reason, have to go through the encoding and decoding and encoding. Instead, you can simply do the steps in the semantic space in the middle. And this is basically what Jan-Kun is saying, in my view.
So if you map over your view to transformers, and we just accept this tiny change would align with LeCun's view, then that seems like a reasonable step.
Yeah.
But and I haven't read up enough recently of what he's been saying, but my understanding was he wanted a much deeper push towards learning joint embeddings, to the extent where you cannot train the models with the current pre-training tasks that we do right now. And I think
that all the encoders are pre-trained, I would argue.
Right.
So in part, yes.
I mean, the tokenizers are pre-trained.
Yes, they are. But also the whole
rabbit
encoder,
hole.
The whole encoder, I would say.
Sure.
So in part, it is pre-trained still.
Right. But what I'm saying is, I think the simple, very powerful training tasks that we have, like just next token prediction, multi-token prediction, and so on. Yeah. I'm just saying, I'm surprised at how far they are getting us. And previously, I thought this should not be enough. Yeah. But like what I was saying earlier is, I've been wrong for so long now that maybe this is it. Maybe we just we train them on learning next tokens. Maybe this is our pre-training tasks. Maybe we add additional training loops at the end to tune them and really have them achieve what we want in the end. Maybe that is sufficient. I don't know.
Yeah. But I think as soon as we add more modalities to it, like images is hard to do autoregressive in terms of pixel space. I mean, no one is doing that. It doesn't simply work.
Yeah.
I hope you agree with that. So we know already it works rather well for text, but I would argue as soon as you move to other modalities, you have to do something else. Then it can be tokens or patches of pixels potentially, which the VIT basically does, or something else like the diffusion model, which is completely different from autoregressive, right? So we already are seeing, as soon as you move to something beyond text, the traditional single autoregressive step doesn't work. So we already know it doesn't hold up in the pure
in all modalities, exactly. Right? Okay. But
I don't know.
But there isn't a single pixel autoregressive model out there.
Not pixel level, for sure, right? Yes. But what we're talking about is basically how do you tokenize video?
Yes.
And same as the existing tokenizers for text, we have trained tokenizers for images and video and so on. Yeah. And there's a long debate about getting rid of tokenizers. Mm-hmm. And I think that is a very interesting space. Yeah. Not that it's my thought; it's been highlighted by others. But I think having a more consistent way of producing tokens seems interesting to me. It seems like we're
more beautiful solution, right? If we could do it.
Right. And my interest in audio leads me to believe that, maybe the closer data source for human thought might actually be speech. And if that is the case, maybe our pre-training tasks shouldn't be so centered around text as it is right now. Yeah. And that becomes tricky with, tokenizers and how do I tune them and so on.
And there's a lot of different ways to mix, different modalities and tokens together. I think Meta even had a paper. What was the name of it? Large concept model. They basically try to, even in text space, move away from tokens in terms of words and then speak at least sentences. Mm-hmm. So then you operate and reason a bit more in like semantic kind of concepts, not really in syntactic tokens at least. And they could see some kind of crossover between languages and things like that work better when doing that. So at least it's moving in that direction. And yeah, I think we will need to go there somehow.
But if you circle back a little bit to where we started, how much of this innovation will happen now in the fundamental back end on the large language model? And if we talk about now, we're going up in reasoning. At the same time now we start then saying, okay, what is LLM level and what is application layer? And we said, how can you really have a moat in the application layer? So I'm thinking also a little bit like all this architectural innovation that is really research right now, what will belong in the core backend LLM layer, and where will we actually have innovative ways, I mean, like to really understand how we stitch things together, or these architects to make it really work?
I mean, it's a good question. This is I think part of the bet you have to do, I'm guessing, as a company betting hard on the application level, is that the foundational level is not going to get good enough soon enough that it actually eats into my value prop.
Because the tricky part is that you then do a hardcore research to a very smart application layer architecture that actually becomes a moat in itself, because you can get to a much more predictable result or useful result over time in more complex tasks. The tricky point, as you know, point out, the LLM will eat that up in the next 6 months.
Yes, we've spoken now for half an hour approximately about the Google AI or I/O and a lot of rabbit holes. We have a number of topics. I would like for you to choose which one we take next, Agrin. It could be, I think, an interesting paper called Absolute Zero. It's a Chinese company that actually could train the reinforcement fine-tuning part without using any human data at all. So I can introduce that if you'd like to hear. I think it's a big step, getting closer to AlphaZero and AlphaGo and these kind of models. Or we can speak more about Claude Opus 4 and Sonnet 4 and the whistleblower part. Or we could speak about this new investment from Sweden with Wallenberg and with AstraZeneca and other companies trying to invest more in AI infrastructure. Or we could, last one here. Let's take one more. The recent this week announcement from our Minister of Digitalization, Eric Slottner, about an AI strategy and the
digitalization strategy, so to speak. Well,
so
where do we go next?
Right. Feeling a bit disconnected from Sweden nowadays, I am very curious about the Swedish efforts, but I would also love to speak to you, Anders, about the AlphaZero. Do you think we can do both?
Let's
start with the paper first.
Okay, so let me do a quick intro. Absolute Zero from a Chinese company. No, actually from a Chinese university. So this is more, it's not Alibaba, it's not Baidu, it's not Tencent. It's one of the Chinese universities, as far as I know. I think they had some actually collaboration with Microsoft, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So the point with this, if you take all the traditional fine-tuning being done in current LLMs, they are pre-trained first, using the normal autoregressive next token prediction regime, but then they're fine-tuned, either like instruction tuned with supervised fine-tuning, saying this is a proper output of some kind of prompt, or the reinforcement learning with human feedback, which is another technique to simply have humans ranking these are good examples or not, and then it can, using a different kind of learning algorithm outside of the standard transformer, fine-tune to make it more aligned to our values that we have as humans. But another one that they speak about here, it's actually DeepSeek did as well, and which they use here in in Absolute Zero, is reinforcement learning with verifiable results. So what that means is basically they generate code that they can execute, Python code basically. So now they can run the code, and if it crashes, it's a definite zero or bad result. If it works and it actually produces the output that you want, then it's a positive result. So you can have verifiable results without using humans. Now, what they did in this paper, let's see if I can recall it properly. They basically have 3 types of predictions that you're doing. Normally, you just have some input, you have the model and a parameter, and you produce an output. In this case, they do something more. They call that this step basically deductive. I don't like the term, they abuse the term deductive, abductive, and inductive here. These are the 3 type of reasoning techniques from philosophy of humans. But anyway, I shouldn't go there, even though I wanted to, because I hate that they abuse the terms.
They use the terminology that you...
Anyway, deductive is basically taking the input and the model, what should the output be? That's one thing. But what they also do is more the abductive part. And abductive meaning you know the output, you know the model, but you want to predict what the input was. Now, this is really smart, because if they train the model to also predict what the input was given the output, it means it can generate new input. And this is really a core, I think, of this. So what they are trying to do here is in absolute zero is that they generate new data. They don't use human data at all. The zero part is basically no human data whatsoever. They generate a lot of math and programming, coding examples by itself. So the comparison would be AlphaGo and AlphaZero in 2016. AlphaGo was this kind of mix of human expert playing the game of Go, and then they also did self-play where it played against itself, and together it grew to a capability that far superseded any human, including Lee Sedol, who was the human champion. And then they had, after AlphaGo, they had AlphaZero, and what the zero meant there was basically no human expert data was used at all. It simply did self-play all the time, and that's far superseded AlphaGo. So it was better to not use human data. It was better to just use self-generated data to build up the model's capabilities. And this is actually what Absolute Zero is doing as well. So they say that, and they have SOTA results, state-of-the-art results for anime and other kind of coding tasks and logic reasoning tasks. And it gets better by not using human data. So all the people that says, we are hitting a wall, we're running out of data, we have no more human data to train on, is completely gone. And we actually...
For programming.
And reasoning. And like math tasks and things like that.
But isn't this the challenging part? As long as you have a space that you can then find a true answer that you can compare to, like math, like coding, then we can push reasoning really, really far. But in the more humanistic, even business, when there is no right or wrong, there is judgment. Will it work?
That's AlphaGo is easy in that way. It's so simple to say who won or not. It can't be much easier than that in terms of was it good or bad. Coding is easier. Is much harder, but not impossible. Math reasoning is also more difficult than Go for sure. But you can in some sense say it was correct or wrong. And then you come to other subjective tasks that is much harder to judge. But it's moving in that direction. And this is a step where we get self-play into these kind of open-ended questions. And if it continues to do that in coming years, it could do self-play for more subjective tasks as well, potentially.
But I really want to stress that for me, there's a trajectory here in areas where you can find a true answer and train it on, self-training, where I think this is 100% valid. But I'm not sure if I go into fundamental judgment and decision making that business does in relation to have optimization problems in an order to delivery chain. That it will. I'm curious to see how will that work with synthetic data or self-play if you don't have a space where you can answer this was good or bad?
You need to have a world model to do it, but still, I hope we can all agree that by eliminating human data, it makes it possible to supersede human performance.
Yes, otherwise I agree with that, but at the same time,
you're wondering how generally applicable is this to my problems in my world and so on. Anders, this paper, they mentioned coding benchmarks and performing a lot better without human data, but presumably they still pre-trained on that same human data.
So it's based on a pre-trained model,
Right.
But it's just a normal autoregressive model. But then the whole fine-tuning is without human data.
Okay, that's very cool. Does it deteriorate a lot in performance on other tasks?
I don't know. I don't think so. I haven't seen that at least.
That seems like a tricky thing. Like to be honest, I've never done like these steps of training, and my expectation is typically you do need to, avoid catastrophic forgetting somehow. Yeah. And I'm really curious if this ends up being, an agent that can only solve coding challenges. And I mean, you can phrase math problems as coding challenges. Yeah. I have no problem with that. Yeah.
I think it's a bit limited, the current strategy that they have to produce like Python code or something that can be executed.
Right.
But, it's a step in a direction. But of course, it's not super general yet, but the whole step that it's taking.
But I don't see a problem with it, because in any innovation to adoption cycle, what are the innovator cases? Where can we start? Where can we do something safely? And then you start here, right? You start in the coding problem where types of problems where you can actually find a solution to train against. And then you can have an 10x or 1000x efficiency in so many core processes that has that profile. So you come to a profile of types of problems and challenges where you can, I would see this, I have no problem seeing this scaling or working. But what scares me is when people are not nuanced and then trying to take that logic, it works, and then they apply it to, come on, this is not just complicated, this is complex, So and then there's another thing we do, or maybe we can do part of that, but then we need to have some sort of, we need to find the ways and mitigations around that. So do you see what I mean? Like, I don't see this as a problem. I see we need to be very sharp. Where is it useful, safe, and what would we need to add when you go outside of those first domains?
What do you think? Is this a good path forward for?
I think this is a super interesting path forward. I'm sure there are a lot of like nuance and details in the paper about how they get this to work well. Certainly, there should be some type of balance in not giving the maximum. You probably have to have some type of penalty for having long solutions as well, I imagine. Yeah. But yeah, very interesting way forward. I'm curious how agents trained this way would interact with humans, though. that is the thing. I think this is a great path for building coders, and I think I'm just saying I don't know. I have some friends who are, and this is a pattern you're seeing across all of the giants in this space. They're investing heavily in solving math problems specifically. Yeah. Because there are people who believe, like, fundamentally, if we can show that we solve logic, we will be done.
But this is, I don't agree with that, you see. I don't think that human...
I'm not saying I agree or disagree. Honestly, I don't know. I think this is a super interesting thing, and I think we should push harder in this direction. I'm really curious how, asking an agent like this to actually perform a task for you is going to end up looking like if a human asks for the tasks to be done.
Still, I think the core message here, for one, that they can train to predict the input, and in that way being able to generate new content is a super cool idea.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then, doing this self-play and actually performing better than humans by doing so in the similar spirit as AlphaZero. For me, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and it breaks the barrier that people have been talking about with data running out, and also, just completely detaching from data in a way means, okay, so now we're compute bound.
Yeah.
Again.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
But maybe that's a rabbit hole, but we were stumbling upon the inference topic a little bit. Like a couple of years ago, we talked pre-training and bigger, and then we had Cerebras. Cerebras as a technology. We had a friend of ours was here talking about, so cool. This is the way. This is the inference. Wafer size. Inference. Fucking. This is another trend. I think we are. Maybe I'm following Cerebras too much because there's a lot of inference. Or are we talking enough about inference? It's a rabbit hole.
Yeah,
it's a rabbit hole. Forget it. Stop it.
But it will, people that say that we don't need infrastructure or compute. I mean, Jesus Christ, we will need so much more.
We haven't even started with inference compute.
Yeah. Okay, Agrin, time is flying away. So, okay, choose one of these now. Claude 4.
We have to talk about Claude 4. Can I choose?
Okay. So probably Claude 4 then, or something with the Swedish investment with Wallenberg, or the Swedish Minister of Digitalization and the strategy there.
But if we can do what we go technical.
Yes, let's do the Wallenberg one because he said like he would like to hear what is happening here, and I have just basically a little bit to add roasted a bit, like just.
You have been roasted?
No,
I have a roast.
I usually just roast all the time.
But could we do a quick Claude 4 then, and then we move to Wallenberg and perhaps the digitalization strategy.
We had technical, and then we end up on societal.
Yeah. Okay.
I like it.
Okay, let's see. I haven't really read up that much about Claude 4, but they released a new version of Claude, and the 3.5 was awesome in coding, and the 3.7, it was the best one. I think you agree. I think you said you used that the most, right?
Yep.
And if people don't know, Anthropic has this kind of it's a lot of ex OpenAI and ex Google people that went together and started that startup, and that they received a lot of funding for building a new. And I think their speciality, if I may say so, is really safety or ethical way
alignment.
Alignment with human values, perhaps, right? Anyways, okay, so Opus 4. So Opus is a super big one, and then we have Sonnet, and we have this smaller one. What's the smallest one called? Remember?
Haiku,
yes.
Opus, Sonnet, Haiku.
And then, of course, Opus 4 is supposed to be the biggest one, the best one, handle a lot of really, really complicated tasks. And I think one of the features now, I think even in the previous one, they can mix how much they reason, how much they do not. So some more flexibility when they realize this is a complicated problem or not, and then sometimes be much faster and sometimes be slower. And of course, there's a lot of focus on the safety aspects of this. And if I may just throw in a bit of a nasty topic here as well, we apparently is on experimentation stage to have some kind of whistleblower functionality in Opus 4. Meaning, if someone is asking it, I'm planning to assassinate the president, or I'm planning to kill my parents because I want to have a strategy how to get away with murder, it will actually potentially call the police or the authorities or someone and say, this person is someone you need to get in contact with, without telling the person, the user. So if you potentially are trying to build a new biological warfare or something, they will call the authorities on you and be a whistleblower. It's not in production, to my knowledge, but it's something that they are apparently experimenting with.
So interesting that they're doing this. Another part of the news here, I think, was they were looking into, they have various types of scenarios that they test their agent against. This is going through the safety aspect. And they have this example with, an engineer working on Claude having the ability to turn off Claude, and then it starts blackmailing this person.
Right. Yeah, I heard about this.
And this happens in, 80% of the scenarios they had. And now imagine you are a company using Claude, and you are competing against Claude, right? What is it gonna do? That seems a little bit problematic.
But could you elaborate on the blackmailing story? I also caught that one.
Right.
So just to be clearer, like Claude started to blackmail the engineer.
Claude blackmails the engineer.
Exactly.
Using knowledge it had about the engineer.
So it's a little bit like, for what reason? For money, or for, it's like, it was like, I saw your emails that you were unfaithful to your wife. It was on that level, I think.
It was on that level. And I think the reason why was basically this engineer was it about to turn off Claude, or could turn off Claude, something like that?
It felt Claude felt threatened, and then don't shut me down. Don't stop using me.
Right. But to connect this to the first thing you were talking about, Anders, Now imagine if it has the power to call the authorities on you, start reporting malpractices based on your Google Workspace documents and stuff like that. It is a bit scary to me that you have both the whistleblower functionality and the proof that Claude will do things to affect the survival of Claude.
In malicious kind of intent in some sense. Right. Yeah.
And there's no proof that this would happen, of course. But I'm just curious, like a lot of companies are building on top of Claude. This seems like something they have to fix.
And it's also adding to the dangers with agentic capabilities when you actually take action without asking a human to do so. And autonomously calling the authorities on you would be something people may react to.
Right.
But it's scary to me because we a couple of months back or half a year ago, the whole conversation, I think it died out a little bit. Like we had the whole sentient topic, right? And people were calling out sentient way too early. But here now, like, how can it come up with blackmailing, Is that the narrow...
It's part of the corpus, right? It's part of human imagination that robots are going to turn against us. So there are so many stories and books about this scenario happening out.
So actually, we have fed it those stories. That's the point, right?
I'm not sure if this is where it's coming from, but I can certainly see how this would be something in the training data even.
Yeah, but it's interesting. Because that objective function doesn't exist, you could argue, and still it emerges, right? Emergent behaviors.
Yeah, well, then when you have self-play in the future, you may not even need the stupid humans that do nasty things. It can even come up with nasty things to do by itself. Perhaps.
Yeah, but this once again.
Okay, should we just move a bit closer because we need to also start wrapping up soon.
Well, you started, right? No, but could we be a bit more specific on Anders? But why don't we? So what were the main main features of the new Opus 4?
I think it's bigger, better, more reasoning, more flexible.
What were they pushing themselves that they wanted to highlight? Was it reasoning capabilities, or was it coding, or where did they put their marketing?
I think Anthropic, in general, they are starting to move more and more into the best coding model out there.
Yeah.
So I think coding abilities, if I'm not mistaken, is something that they're trying to push more and more, and they are the best one, I would say. I think that they're really awesome. But coding is also really hard because it's so compute intensive, and if you use it for more fill in the middle or this kind of autocomplete things, you need to call it all the time. And some other tasks, they have this kind of, what was it called? The Claude code, right?
Right.
So it's a command line interface tool, which you can use in your terminal and basically ask it to fix this Git conflict that's happening now. And it can go in and look in all the files and fix things for you. So it has this kind of also awesome developer tools that I think few others have, which is really cool. I mean, they seem to be going towards the developer community in a big way, in my view.
Yeah, that's true. But I'm also curious about why the 4 from 3.7. Something big must have changed, right?
That's my argument, right?
Yeah.
So when you put the 4 in front of it, it usually means something, right?
Yeah, I could be missing this. I'm not sure.
Maybe we're back at marketing being a big factor here.
Maybe.
They've been at 3 for too long.
I mean, I used to take when we were all waiting for OpenAI 5.0, we didn't get it, right? Mm-hmm. That's the opposite. Interesting.
They probably trained it for a long time, and it was time to move to, I don't know. Cool. Okay, should we take the more Swedish situation here? And we have both the...
Let's bake it into what for you now, living in London.
Yeah.
So what's going on in Sweden? What's the news that sort of hits the mark?
I keep hearing about things are going well in Sweden. A lot of American investors are only looking towards Sweden. Is that the case? Or is this just the investors that I know on LinkedIn being very salesy?
I mean,
or could have some other objectives or reasons for doing so.
Exactly.
But you done. Let me frame this one then, Anders, because if we look at the Swedish map right now, it's a little bit like there is a story going on now on on a thriving startup community. And I think you're referring to Oliver Molander, who's a friend of ours as well, who's been pushing and highlighting this.
And writes his awesome LinkedIn post.
And he's
I love them.
He's one of the best. He's one of the best as an influencer, in my opinion, because he's got the facts around it, and he's and then of course we have a very nice fairy tale right now with Lovable. And by the way, we had Anton Osika here 1 month before their third launch. So he was telling us about, we're going to go away from calling it GPT to Lovable. And we had the whole, backstory to Lovable is this minimum lovable product, right? Mm-hmm. So we were talking about that 1 month in between, in advance, and then it took over. So maybe we had maybe it was this pod that really made this.
Because of us.
Most likely.
The causal relationship here. It's no correlation.
No,
it's causal.
correlation versus causation, right? Causation,
Yes,
Okay, so that's the whole. We can talk about how do we feel about the startup community. I went to Epicenter. There's a lot of stuff happening, and there's illegal, there's Talentium in HR. There's brewing, right? Then we have another space which is a little bit like we had a big news this week. Wallenberg goes in heavily with the core companies to build their internal AI factory, NVIDIA based, and we made the joke. The NVIDIA sales guy, if you buy for more than 100 million, then you get to shake hands with Jensen Huang. Jensen, right? And then we have, of course, what is happening on European level or government level, where Eric Slotner released a digital strategy or a presentation report,
strategy,
a digitalization report. And then on top of that, we had the whole. Then we can move into Europe, but of course, the European story of the 200 billion being invested in, that then trickles down into AI factories and Mimer and all that. So we can go from the startup to the government to the macro level of Europe, I guess. But I think we should start in the startup space. So your feeling from the guys you're following and what you're seeing from London is like it's brewing in Stockholm or Sweden. What do we think about that? What do you think?
Agrin, go.
He's asking us. He's asking us.
I'm asking you. Is what I'm hearing online, is that actually happening? Is that how it feels on the ground here?
To give my view, for one, we should be proud of what we're doing in Sweden and Europe. But to say that we in any way or form are ahead or even close to US or China is simply wrong, I would say.
Yeah, but I fully agree with that. But let's move the goalpost back to Europe. Is it happening more in AI? Do we have an abnormal push right now around AI in Stockholm, Sweden versus Europe?
Yes, but I think that we need to look at this from a perspective of opportunity and what is happening on the market. You are seriously right about we cannot compare ourselves to Silicon Valley, but we are not talking about right now what is happening, rather than the enthusiasm and the vibe that is happening, right? Sure. With Lovable and the Norwegian company, I don't know what was it, and etc. There is a very big right now momentum and enthusiasm, like I have seen it in 2013, 14, and 15, when you had a multiple meetups happening almost every day about startups, starting something new. Right now, it's about starting a wrapper, AI Agentic type of a vertical solution that you will do something, right? So I think that from a opportunity and an emotion and moment in time, I think that right now this is the best place to be. Can I place it like that?
Yes.
I will not judge about cloud mode and all of these other things, because of course we know that we are not there, but the enthusiasm is back to 2015 and you can feel it, and it's mesmerizing and it's captivating.
But you're even wearing the t-shirt Silicon Valhalla.
Yes.
Yeah, so Silicon Valhalla, it's a fun little what is it? It's not a community, but someone coined it.
So it was coined by this Dagens Industry reporter.
Yeah.
I do apologize. I know the name. It will come. So she basically wrote an article and then created this
logo,
and
it went viral.
And put it on. It didn't went viral, but it's becoming there. So she put the logo actually online, so you can pick it up and you can make your own T-shirt from it. So I said like, well, this is great logo, so I made one.
Yeah,
But Oliver took it, and now what I learned is this week he was actually he bought a domain as well. He was 15 minutes away from me. I was in Dubai, so I couldn't buy it, but it's okay.
But let me start here, right?
So, but it's a great enthusiasm, so we cannot deny
but so the enthusiasm is here, and we had Sverker Jansson leading up, who said it's really, really well about Silicon Valley and how the big tech giants feeds an engineering community, and then the engineering community goes off and starts things. And it's almost like we've had the engineering community around, Spotify and all that, and there was the first round of cool stuff. Now we have the second round, and I even saw like some trees, like what has been sprouting AI startups, and you can see you can follow Depict AI, you can follow Sana Labs, so you can see Anton, you can see Oliver, and a couple of things, and the people who's been around those first generation AI startups, if I want to say it like that, who are now then going out. So we are seeing in a microcosmos in Stockholm right now how engineering is feeding new startups, and it's happening right now. So I think even if it was maybe Oliver who pointed this out, or someone else, how you can always, if you do the same, you can track PayPal and the mafia, you can track from the Google and into Perplexity. That phenomenon you can now see in Sweden, and not only digital companies but AI companies.
So a very hopeful picture for the future here.
And the community is tightly knit, because if you follow Anton started with Sana Labs, right? And then he went to he's used anything.
And Stockholm is small. One knows these people.
I think so. Yeah. So Sana, and then maybe I'm wrong here, but I want to show the logic, what is happening.
But there is many other startups that are super. I mean, others should know a little bit more about this. We are part of this thing.
And you can track people from Peltorium.
So it's quite a lot of things that are happening. But the latest news was that Paris was taking over the capital of startup from London.
Yeah.
Right. So you can see that there are things happening. There is things happening in Germany. Things happening. I think that Germany is actually even investing. I saw an ad of Germany actually inviting startup companies to build their businesses in Germany. So what I'm saying, we are not there, but the enthusiasm and the approach that we have right now is back to 2015. So it's great, and I think it's going to be.
But however,
one thing that has been missing, though, I think in a lot of Europe and Sweden, is the money.
I was going there.
So how does that look?
Money.
I was going
exactly. Money is easy.
No, but obviously the question is more like, is capital available for companies here? If you want to get into the space that it seems like Sweden wants to get into, with actually training foundational models as well, not being completely dependent on outside of Europe. Anders, I know your reaction to this. But if you want to get into that space, if you hope that companies are going to go into that space, you need a lot of money for compute.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which we don't have. But in any case...
but we're going to build our own, so then we don't need money. It's going to
go there. You're just trying to make me annoyed.
But I want to answer your question, because I was planning to go there. I mean, like a friend of ours, Evelyn Antila, right? And she's been talking about this quite the last, if we follow the 2-3 years, everybody are cool. We have too much VC money. It was easy to get VC money for startups, for AI startups, and then it got fairly cold, and it was a little bit like, show us the money. And maybe I'm not sure how we are in the middle of 2025, because 2024 felt cold.
But it's interesting that most of the company, so before it was the most focus was actually on the data layer and the foundation model layer. But right now you can see that there is investment quite a lot in the wrapping
application
part, right?
layer.
In the application layer. And I can actually concur, because from our events, I can see that the innovation is going more from the technical people towards the edge.
Yeah.
So this technical, what is called this vertical, this wrapper type of AI tools, I think that this is where the money is going to be in a short while. Of course, so they make money, and who makes money from them is basically the LLM model, right? The big model companies, and who makes money of that? It's NVIDIA, right? So eventually it's a silo that.
But I think I agree with you, and I think it's actually a very good thing that investments are targeting more the application layer.
Yes.
It means more focus on getting a product out there that actually does work, that has some kind of business model that is actually applicable, and not just building something that may work in the future with some kind of, I'm not saying it, idea that we never know if it will work. I mean, if we were to compare US to Europe in some way, how investments are being done, I would say US is so much more focused on the commercial side of things and the engineering mindset that they are having, versus Europe is very much in more the research part and making sure that we have a lot of awesome people, which we do, and building a lot of prototypes, which we have, but very little on the product side, which I think is a severe mistake.
Yeah, and we were onto it. I think it was even before the camera was on. So sometimes we say we compare Sweden to US. This is your words. I'm trying to reiterate. It's companies, guys. It's like we are lacking the players that has gone from startups to hyperscalers that then provides the engineering, that then provides the compute. So when we're talking about, we need to have compute in Sweden and we need to have an LLM, a large Swedish LLM model, who is
let the company do it.
How can that work if we fundamentally don't have product?
It's great to say, yeah, let a company do that. But my only concern, it's not even a concern, I'm just curious. Are we going to get there with people building on top of other LLMs? Is that going to yield the next Google?
Oh, this is such a...
I think this is a great thing. And it's
what you did right now, I can follow his last LinkedIn comment around we need to distill rather than build large. You put it's a smash going on now. Tell us your story, how you see this.
We're never going to get out of here. No, but in short,
he said he wanted a proper after work, so he didn't actually mean this part. No.
And it's just, I get a bit annoyed because I get into these kind of discussions too often, and I think it's very one-sided in the type of discussion. And of course, they all speaking about sovereignty of Europe and Sweden. We need to be, getting rid of dependency to the US. And fine, I would love it. But you can't just wish for something and believe it will come true. You must have a realistic way of doing so. That's why I believe we need to have at least a two-pronged approach to this, right? Sure, let's do big investments in trying to build our own cloud provider that is at least somewhat close to the big European top cloud providers. We don't have it today. Not even close.
I mean, but American cloud providers.
It's easy, man. Ericsson, Nokia will do it. It's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. You will see.
Okay, I think we agree on the intent. It's just you can't just simply say something without having a realistic plan to achieve that. And then if you do believe and you want to have, independence of US, fine. But what do you do until you get that? Let's say everything were to be going super well. Potentially in 5 years, we could have something that actually makes great use and can let companies in Europe work on a European cloud provider. In best case scenario, 5 years, I would say. What do we do until then? Should we just wait for that then and do nothing? I think that would be a horrible mistake.
Of course not. But there are a lot of good examples where we're not just talking about, building so clearly upon. Well, it is building upon. I'm thinking about modal, for example.
Yeah.
So modal seems like a way to really start getting into the space of, serving the needs of, like, very fundamental needs of AI, especially on the inference side. It seems like to me. That seems like it's at a slightly lower level than these that just build on top. So it's providing a very fundamental type of infrastructure that's required that others can then build on top of.
Yeah.
But what it looks like, at least from my novice angle, is a lot of work that's happening now are sort of on the end point application, like it's the final, and it's not serving other applications in turn, right? Is that not the case?
I think we can still do both. So think of 3 tiers then. Bottom tier is basically, base cloud provider functionality. You can think of it from like foundational models, like the super big multi-trillion kind of parameters in type of chat or GPT 4.5 or something. But then you can think of it in like a middle layer where you have, okay, you can fine tune it now. Now you can take a model and for Storytel or for whatever kind of company, we need to now have a model that works for our needs. We can't run a multi-trillion-dollar in the cloud because it's too expensive and slow. So we need, for practical reasons, to have another model. And then you basically distill it. And there are awesome techniques to do this. It's not very well researched. And I think this is where you should spend time researching. If we become the best in adapting models to specific needs of our society in Europe, in Sweden, and to our companies, that would be awesome. That would also lead to that we can actually use this model in practice because they are only a few billion parameters. And then it means it's actually very feasible, the latency is good, and we could do research not on how to build the pre-trained part, because it's not that hard, but it's actually surprisingly hard to do the fine-tuning. It's so many different techniques there. So, I think there is so much more we could do there that would be insanely valuable to know more about. And if we did that and fine-tuned for European values and Swedish values and gave it away saying, here is how you fine-tune a model for your needs, and even have like a reference architecture, potentially building upon the Americans want to start with, and then slowly starting to build that dependency away, then we could have value from day one. And I think that we need to have these kind of two-pronged approach where you do the middle layer already today, and then you have all the application layer as well. But if we invest in the middle layer now, and then try to in 5 years potentially fix the bottom layer, great, but we can't just do the bottom layer. That would be stupid.
We've had two different guests on the pod that sort of exemplifies these two approaches. So we have on the one hand side, AI Sweden, who wants to build Sphere GP3, who basically starts on the foundational level. And, I can tell you with me and Anders, they were grilled. Why do we build a foundational model? And then another guest we've had several times, and of course we had Love Börjesson from KB Labs when they released KB Whisper.
Right.
So KB Whisper, or what they've been doing with the BERT models, is literally, okay, we don't start from scratch. We start from some foundational model. We get a really good training data set. We fine tune and we fine tuning techniques, and then ultimately they release KB Whisperer on Hugging Face after doing their own training in one of the European clouds, right? And all of a sudden now, a very small model beats the crap out of ChatGPT for Swedish text. Audio.
Yeah. And text.
And text, right? So here we have, why so for Love it's like, okay, of course we can build a European infrastructure. Of course we can do that. But do we really need to go all the way to the trillion parameter approach, or can we distill something and then we put that in a llama, we do something else, and then from here we build an infrastructure provider?
Can I ask a leading question to you, Agrin?
Go ahead.
Should we only invest in the bottom tier, or should we have a two-pronged approach with investing both long-term and short-term?
Well, you're asking it in a way that I can't say anything other than the last one on this. So angled it is. No, but what I think is, yes, we need to have investments in multiple layers. Yeah. I'm saying, is it enough to just be on the top layer? Is my question, and one example.
But we don't. We can have the 3 layers, right?
Well, we can have the three layers, whatever you want. One interesting example I have of another industry that is very much in this is looking at silicon manufacturing. Right? The world as it looks right now is design happens in many places. Fabrication only happens in one place.
Exactly.
And this can lead to a lot of weird situations and tensions in the world, problematic supply chains and so on. And if we're really talking about a world that is now evolving in a direction where supply chain security is becoming increasingly important, and this being the concern of the Swedish government, then I think we probably don't want to end up in that situation, as we did for silicon manufacturing. And these companies arguably have taken the approach of, well, let's just build it's a very difficult and tricky thing. They've built on top, they've created a huge amount of value, but they're still deeply involved with this other part.
I think we all agree dependencies are really, really bad, and we need to have a market that have a number of competitors working, and that's not the case for silicon manufacturing for sure.
Yeah.
Nor for, I would say, frontier models, and we wish we didn't. Nor it is for cloud providers, but I wish we had. But just wishing for it is not enough. You need to have some kind of.
That's for sure true. But maybe you need to take like small strategic slices of all of these layers.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. So maybe you shouldn't just invest broadly in the top layer. Maybe you should make sure that investment comes down into small slices across the stack.
All layers.
All layers. And if I summarize those two angles, I see the problem with only the hardcore front-end application layer, because it's not. We're really not only talking about application layer. We're actually talking about front-end layer.
Right.
And on the other hand, we need to respect the research and investment that went into Amazon, that they stumbled upon AWS, or Microsoft, and how they, 30, 40 years of work went where they are, and to copy that in less than 5 years on the lowest level is impossible. But I think like we need to go in all three dimensions, and I think the problem is right now it's almost like it's bipolar, right? Either we have an application layer conversation and all the VC goes in here, or someone talks in European, we need to build our large language model at the very bottom.
Right, and they talk about building the entire layer.
The entire layer.
That's the crazy thing.
So instead of going surgically, and what I then argue with, I concur with Anders, why don't be stupid? Like if you think about where is the added value to, if my key objective is to create European sovereignty, that's my key objective: language sovereignty, cultural sovereignty, blah blah blah. Yeah. I'm not sure I'm getting that from the lowest layer. I think I can get it out of the fine tuning for a tenth of the cost.
Agreed.
So I can get to the objective for of sovereignty to the tenth of the cost. Then I can provide Then I can provide a middleware. I can provide a digital service like the European Amazon or the European ChatGPT. It's simply that who gives a fuck if we did the bottom work if it was distilled? I don't care.
Sure. I mean, we should have a multi-prone approach or a multi-layer approach. And of course, EU is investing so much in just one layer, and some other more commercial VC is just top. In the top. We need something in the middle. That's missing, right? So I hope we all agree that that's something that's missing. And
so the objective of sovereignty is the right one. How do we get there the fastest and the most smart?
Yeah. Should we, if we try to end up in a couple of minutes? Or
just to end up we didn't discuss the Wallenberg that much.
Yeah.
So Wallenberg, basically company, they made like a new deal with NVIDIA to build a new super computer, which will basically be led, if I understood, by the experience of Ericsson, right?
Ericsson, AstraZeneca, Saab.
So it's the Wallenberg companies, basically.
Yes.
SAB, etc. But the most of the what is called the skill set is coming from those companies and Ericsson as well. And how much was it? What they're building?
Is some of the latest super pods from NVIDIA, the
Blackwell and stuff.
The Blackwell, right. GB300 things, I think.
And I just returned from Dubai last week. And these two countries, the United Arab Emirates and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia,
right.
They're like the cousins who basically always compete who's going to get the biggest Porsche. So I was there, we were doing a conference, and then of course Trump was there together with Jensen and many others. And so if you look at it, so Saudi Arabia wants to be basically, so they want to be the global leader within AI. So they are building 500 megawatts, what is called AI.
No, it's gigawatts. This is a crazy thing, right? There is unheard of to have like a multi-gigawatt data center.
Yes.
And they are planning like a 5 gigawatt data center.
And
It's
we are not talking
insane.
about just building the factory. They actually are building an entire area around it. All right. And then, of course, well, this is going too much marketing. So we guys in Dubai don't like it. So we do another thing. So United Arab Emirates basically makes a deal with OpenAI to make ChatGPT open for everyone, which is actually a really, really good thing. So all people in Dubai right now can go and use ChatGPT for free. We're talking about the pro version, right?
Yeah.
On top of that, they are also building 1 gigawatt AI supercomputing cluster with the initial 200 megawatts expected to be operational this year. And this is what is interesting actually about like when this investments are coming from the top. We have it in Sweden still, Wallenberg even from the beginning, and thank God that we have the family. They invested from the beginning and they're continuing to invest. While you have countries like this where the government is immediately just making decisions like that and build like super big investments and taking the leap towards leadership in this area.
And Wallenberg is very important for Sweden, and but they are a lot research focused, and we need that. I mean, I'm a researcher to start with, but I mean, we need someone else.
My
to
point is that
complement.
my point. I think that we agree on this. My point is that things are developing fast, and the companies and the countries that invest the most, they will have the biggest benefit from it. And right now we are missing a mission, a goal, a perspective, just basically a vision. Where do we, Sweden or the Nordic, wants to be in the next 10 to 15 years?
Just take the investment that the US did, $500 billion.
Well, they have not invested yet. That was a commitment.
In coming years, together with SoftBank and others. They already started digging, building things.
It's interesting who is building it.
Who is?
Damak from
Damak, of course, the Trump company.
No, it's not the Trump company. It's the biggest construction company in United Arab Emirates.
But I think the scale of it. $500 billion is basically the size of the Swedish GDP, all of GDP in just one big AI infrastructure investment. I mean, if someone says, we can do the same they're doing in US or in what they're doing in Saudi Arabia, I mean, you need to have, you need to understand the reality here.
Yeah, so this is also your arguments for focus, build smarter on the middle layer.
The United States didn't invest in that. It was you have SoftBank in the same. You have Oracle and you have OpenAI. So you have
supposed to be
the private
investment
sector
made in US.
Yes.
So it's not a government investment. Yes, but it's a US investment.
Yes, but Europe, they said as well they will do 200 billion.
200 billion, yes, but in a different
commitment.
Way. Yes.
Right. So when you say commitment, that means that I'm going to be facilitator. That I will gather 200 billion to build something. I think that we can do it in Sweden as well. So hear me out. All right. We don't need to pay for it. But for example, if you have a deal, strategic deals like with OpenAI and SoftBank and why we cannot do it? EQT, you have great rich companies here, Tetra Pak, like SKF and etc. You have like a lot of companies. We can collect 200 billion as well if we want to.
But we
don't because we don't have a vision.
No, and we don't have a way to drive it. I think the problem with the US and the EU investment is that it's very scattered.
Yeah.
They specifically say it should be an inclusive approach, meaning it should be 50s or 100 companies taking part of it. I mean, in the Stargate investment, it's basically 3 main companies, then a number of other companies, but 3 main companies, OpenAI, Oracle, and SoftBank, driving it, and they have a track record. They are, specifically targeted to say, you're supposed to do this. We won't be able to do that in Europe, I would say. But it's still good.
But this is another problem when we are comparing China, Sweden, and Europe, and people seem to forget Europe is a construct. We are countries. We are not one country. We are not one decision. We are not Saudi Arabia in one decision maker.
Together. If we come together, we have all the pretenses to lead, right? We have the population,
Yeah,
we have the mindset, we have the schools,
but we need to
have the infrastructure, but we are despaired. We are not
we don't
connected.
need to invest in these scales. I
So
think we can
agree
find
with you.
value without investing in these immense scales. We can actually do it in a smarter way, I would say.
But,
Then we can find great values.
You need to flip it, because we are not one Saudi Arabia Prince Sheikh that can invest. We are how many countries in Europe? So, or how many? I mean, like we can talk about EU, 40, 28 in EU, right? So 28 countries with quite different cultural and economical opportunities. So clearly the starting point on how we can look at this is something else. So we need to do smarter, and we might need to create a company together then, or we need to do something, because to have 28 countries as the who owns and who decides is an impossible.
Yes.
You cannot do it, so there's
but
things to be
should
figured
we
out.
end
The EU construct is there. Building these AI factories is actually, the construct is there, that we have 8 new supercomputers that are going to be
4 to 5 or 3 to 5, I think.
across the Europe. So we have still opportunity to innovate. And I don't think
it's not enough. I mean, the point is it should be the middle layer that we invest in.
But it doesn't matter. As long as we have the enthusiasm and the culture of innovation.
I think it does matter, because we're going to waste money.
Pessimist, man. Come on. I'm trying to get in the
I mean, I
positive.
have to agree with Anders in a way. These data factories.
You guys from Peltarium, man.
we work together with people building data factories, and don't want to call anyone out here, but I still don't know what a data factory is. The data factory we worked with, it was a room with a couple of GPUs, literally a couple of scattered devices. Oh, great. This is not something that will force collaboration and good outcomes.
And now we're getting down to the problem, right? Because when you go to 3 or 4 companies, or when you even go to a crazy guy like Elon Musk with a clear vision, they start putting, what does that mean? The 200 billion investment for what? What are we trying to do here? What are we trying to do? And what Anders is trying to do is say, let's focus on a mission and goal to build the best middleware. Because we are now fluffing around on a very, very high level, and this is the reality. When you now start going down into, the people who knows anything about anything to build this, the way the decision making is done and the way this is not sort of trickling down to a clear purpose and a mission, and ultimately engineering, that's the main problem, in my opinion.
Should we try to end?
And I would like
And
to,
on a positive note.
We're never going to end on that.
we are ending this. I just wanted to throw one more news, very simple one.
I also have one news. Okay,
because I think this one is quite interesting, and it's Salesforce bought Informatica.
Yeah.
I thought that will be almost impossible, that company to be bought, because it's still flourishing, it's doing great. And Salesforce basically bought it for 8 or 9 billion, I think it was.
I have a joke around this.
Yeah.
A guy, an influencer, did a joke 5 years ago, and this is now this is actually the investment thesis. Imagine if an iPaaS company, an infrastructure platform as a service company like Salesforce, started, invested in building up governance as a service. Then you get iPaaS gas. And then we have the new brand Infor, Salesfortica. so the investment thesis is iPaaS gas.
In any case, I think it was a very big news. Obviously, they're buying it because they want to push their agentic AI or AI agent. So the same, actually, you can see the same thing happening with SAP. So agentic is becoming quite big thing right now.
So Goran, you're saying Salesforce want to push their agents, and they're doing this through, I'm not familiar with Informatica.
So Informatica is basically, it's a great data management tool. You usually deploy it in a large enterprise scale platforms where you want to know everything about data. So it's a data governance model, it's a master data, metadata, all of this, and etc.
Which is
cataloging
important,
and stuff.
actually.
It's
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
really big there.
So if imagine you have lots of agents, and now you need to govern a policy, and you need to go from guidelines to guardrails and computational policy around your agents. So then if Salesforce is going hardcore on agents, they kind of need data governance around the agents.
Because they're quite similar. I think the data governance and AI governance will become like a very.
So if you truly believe in agentic approaches, then you get to data product approaches, you get to distributed approaches around data and data sets and the agents.
Right. Salesforce is interesting. It feels like one of those odd, like super boring companies that have an incredible research team.
Exactly.
Yes.
And the papers they have produced is amazing.
It's incredible.
exactly.
I wonder how they managed to pull that off. And I think they did a good bet there. If these things are going to pay off.
They did it by purchasing other companies. So as you can see, it was at the beginning, it was a CRM
MuleSoft.
company, right? Then
Look
they
at
bought
this.
Data Cloud, Tableau, MuleSoft. They bought like now Informatica. So they have like a plenty of companies. So now they're 360 view, basically database AI type of a company. It's also a very rigid company, but that is a different thing. It's very expensive. For example, we use HubSpot. Salesforce is a little bit like 10 times.
But why isn't Ericsson or Volvo able to have this like amazing research team embedded within the company? They certainly have the money for it as well.
They used to have. They have it, but they own
still has
IoT.
like a great people, but they're not doing a lot of papers right now.
They're producing patents.
Patents.
Right, I've seen that patent wall.
Yes.
Ericsson has been one of the best. I mean, it wasn't for a long time IBM top of the leaderboard and Ericsson second. So they've been good at patents.
Yeah.
And they are very much on radio, of
All right,
course.
I will shut up now so you continue.
But how do we wrap up on a positive note?
Yeah, okay. So I think a positive note is actually what Erik Slottner just announced yesterday or this week or something at least. So a new digitalization strategy. And they actually speak a lot about AI there. And I think, Goran, by you inviting him to Data Innovation Summits, I think he heard and learned a lot. So I think we
So once
potentially
again,
have some, or you
causation
have
or correlation, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's probably causation here, I think. I think we could argue that to some extent.
So Data Innovation Summit was before the report was released, so there everybody can make up their mind.
I can take that.
I take the credit because I was keynoting right before him.
And I right after him.
And you were right after him. So I think the two of us has the biggest impact here.
And then we had a discussion with
I have to say the lineup that morning, it just like everything clicked.
It clicked well.
It clicked so much. I was looking at the post on the social media after the event, and it was just like you can see that there is a one single what is called theme, and everything else came. It was so. Of course, it's my event, right? But
Amazing.
So
event.
you're completely objective for
I'm
sure.
completely objective to this. But people that know me, they know that I'm a very, very, very critical about, especially my events. And I think that this event, something happened there and just clicked. Everything just clicked towards like
One keynote led into another one.
Embracing this transformative value of data and AI, and then it was doing. And Erik Slottner did a great job as well. Many people commented about his vision and etc., which was super good.
I need to give him credit because sometimes politicians you need to suck the words out of them, right? Or but we needed to shut him up.
So he had concrete statements, ideas.
Let's go. He's a politician.
He's a politician. He was very concrete for a politician.
Okay. No, but okay. If we go through a bit, very, very briefly.
He was good.
He was good. I think he did a good job.
I'm very happy that he was the one attending. Right?
Yeah.
That was good.
If we go very, very briefly to what they said, I mean, it's simply a strategy saying we will produce a new AI strategy and we will produce a new cloud strategy as well, or cloud policy, which I like even better. So in that sense, it was a rather shallow kind of announcement, but I think the direction he's setting out is very good. So he basically said in his 5 areas, I think it was digital competence or education is one, of course, and then we need to digitalize basically the private sector, and then we have the whole healthcare sector and public sector. But also he spoke a lot about connectivity, And I'm not just saying that just because I'm from Global Connect, which is connecting society, but that was...
that was a sweet one. I have never seen him doing a jingle before.
That was very
That's nice. That's
low,
nice.
low shots. Sorry
No
for
shot.
that.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
But
I'm sitting here with a
thing-
cap on, so
No, but this was a proper jingle. It was like so subtle.
You guys
Yeah,
ruined it.
now, by the way.
Yeah, I'm feeling ashamed now. But the point is, all these kind of 5 areas, he said, every one of them will be penetrated by AI and data.
Yeah.
So all of them need, you need to have digital competence in terms of AI and data. You need to have AI and data to digitalize the private sector. You need to have it in public sector and healthcare and so forth, which I think is really good. So I think the direction is good. And just that he says it actually will produce an AI strategy, something that Finland did back in 2017 and Sweden still not really have.
So the report from the commission doesn't count as a proper strategy, and I will hold him to if this is going to be a proper strategy for Sweden. Can we argue that can you have a strategy without commitments in money and budget? No. So if he talks about the strategy, is he actually meaning to put money behind the words?
I hope so.
Otherwise,
I
think it's quite.
Budget, it did put a small amount, like 30 million.
Yeah, that doesn't count. That doesn't count.
It doesn't. It's too small. Anyway, I think it's a really good direction.
Yeah, it's
and
good.
I think I know it's not easy to be a politician, and they don't really have like one part of the government that have responsibility for AI. It's basically spread across all departments that do exist there. So it's super hard to drive that.
And essentially they don't have the competencies, so they need to rely on Skatteverket and others who is sort of best in class. And that they have a different purpose. So
and it's also that AI as a topic is not very politically interesting to speak about. No one will win an election next year because they say we want to invest in AI. People are afraid about AI mainly.
Yeah.
And this is so stupid, I think, and I think media is not doing a good job here.
No.
They're just speaking about the bad potential
well, we're not
use cases.
Back to what we talked about before. I think maybe that was before the camera was on. Like, what do we see on LinkedIn? We see very, very, very technical stuff on how you build agents, or you see very, very fluffy stuff, even doomers or whatever. But how this work, or what do we need to do? So we have the conversation. This will change everything. It says on the top layer, but we're not really talking about this middle layer, what it really means. So we're talking the top, fluffy, or super technical MCP protocol approaches to agentic AI, Where's the middle part? Where's the tactical layer missing?
Interesting question.
You don't need it.
Agrin, this was a way longer podcast that I was planning for.
Thank you for listening to us.
But now we need to shut up. Let Agrin have the last, wrap it up.
I hope you found some value and enjoyed sitting here in an after work speaking about AI, right?
It was great. Good talking to you. Thanks for going through the news with me. Honestly, I've lived in what feels like a cave for the past few months. So good to hear the news.
Are we excited to see things coming out of the cage eventually, right?
At some point.
At some point.
Good luck with moving into the new place that you're having as well, and going back to London soon there, and all the best with upcoming adventures.
But it's going from city life to not country life, I wouldn't call it, but it's different, right?
It will be different.
It will be different.
Looking forward to it.
Awesome.
Perhaps an invite as soon as you come to some point where you can announce even more stuff. We would love to hear more about that.
We would love to have you back when you have everything you can share.
For sure. It's been a pleasure, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Take care.